Hi, everybody. So, this is really exciting. We are here for our latest episode of His Picks, Her Picks. And this is a series that we do every month where my friend Richard and we pick a topic and then we each pick a movie that the other person hasn't seen in that topic. And then we talk about them and compare them. And this month, we are doing a royal like British royalty as sort of our topic. We were inspired by Victoria and The Crown, great TV shows, and so we thought it would be sort of fun. And we're talking about A Royal Night Out and Her Majesty Mrs. Brown, or Mrs. Brown, depending on where you live. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So do you want to say hi, Richard?
Hey, hello.
And perfect person to be doing this with, since you're from the UK.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, all right. I'm really excited about talking about these movies. I thought they were both really strong. What do you think is the appeal of the British family in storytelling? Like I said, we've seen it in Victoria. We've seen it in The Crown. We still see a lot of interest in Kate and Harry and William and everybody. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. Well, I think obviously the monarchy has a very long history behind it, like dating back over 1,000 years, and so there's a lot to explore there. But also the monarchy has this symbolic value. They kind of represent the whole country in a way, and I think when you have these people who have that kind of role, then it's good for these shows to look into the more human side of them that they don't usually show in public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I don't know, there's just something about them, I think, that is oddly sort of, I don't know, it's just sort of like a modern day fairy tale in a way. I think that is what people are drawn to, especially, with Kate.
Oh, yeah.
At least I was. And I was, when they had the royal wedding, my friends and I, we stayed up late. We watched it. We had a tea party and we made our own hats.
Oh, yeah.
And decorated them. And it was so fun.
I remember, obviously that was before we knew each other, but I remember looking at your old blog post about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was actually it was a holiday here. So there wasn't much else to do except watch the wedding.
Sure.
But no, I was pleased to watch it. It was good.
Yeah.
And you are right about it having this kind of fairy tale role, this traditional role. I mean, tradition is not always a good thing, but I feel with the monarchy, it's appealing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I don't know, like you get tired of everything being so like depressing. And I feel like that's something you can just escape. There's an escapism to it, I feel like.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like another world.
It's funny because I go back and I read my post that I did about the royal wedding way back. I think it was like 2006, right? 2007?
It would have been 2011, the royal wedding. It was April 2011.
Oh, was it 2011? I was thinking it was further back. 2011. Anyway, 2011. And I was reading my post the other day and I'm like, in the post, I'm like, oh, everything. And there's so many problems and it's just so depressing. And I really needed this to like lift me up and everything. And I'm thinking, what was so bad in 2011? Just funny how quickly you kind of forget.
Yeah.
So who knows? We'll have another royal wedding. Who knows?
If Harry marries his girlfriend.
Yeah, that'd be exciting. So, all right. Well, I do have the chat room open. It looks like Tom Blinkney's in there, which is awesome. He says, I grew up with the royal family. Yeah. Okay. So these two movies, I think, are really good examples of kind of the escapism that you get with the royal family. And I think they're going to be really interesting to talk about because they both take very different approaches to true stories too. Yeah. So I think it's interesting on that level. And so we have Her Majesty Mrs. Brown or Mrs. Brown, depending on, I've seen it called both things. And then we have A Royal Night Out.
Yeah.
And
I think it's called Mrs. Brown here, but the problem is when you type Mrs. Brown into Google, you get this comedy series called Mrs. Brown's Boys, which is about this it's like this Irish comedy of this guy in drag. I haven't really watched it, but yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah.
I like I said, I think maybe it was just in the U.S. It was called Her Majesty Mrs. Brown.
Right.
Who knows? But let me just pull this up real quick. So I guess should we talk about that first?
Mrs. Brown.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so this movie, the plot is pretty simple. You have Queen Victoria is in heavy grief because of the loss of her husband. And she is in Scotland, I think, right? Or somewhere.
I think it starts on the Isle of Wight. And then it moves up to Balmoral in Scotland.
Okay. And so she is recused herself from public life. And it's been 2 years, I believe, since her husband's death. Yeah, she's still recused, and they're kind of desperate to get anything to get her out of this. And so they get a servant of a friend of her husband's in Scotland that named Mr. Brown, who had been a friend of her husband, and played by Billy Connolly. And I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. Okay, hopefully it's okay. But so they get this man, Mr. Brown, to come, and he's very like tough talking. He's very kind of rough and coarse, but they end up bonding, becoming friends, and he is able to kind of get her. He is able to finally get her to come out of that hiding kind of that she is. But it's a really beautiful story about friendship and about love and about grief and about a lot of different things. Judi Dench plays Queen Victoria, and she's amazing, I think, in it. And I really loved it. I remember really liking it back in the day. It came out in 1997. But on the rewatch, I really, really loved it. I just love stories about friendship and so much. Oh, yeah. And so it really moved me. It made me cry. And I thought it was just subtle and moving and really beautiful. So I don't know. What did you think about it?
Yeah. Well, friendship is kind of underrated in films as opposed to romance, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But no, I enjoyed it as well. I found it was quite reserved and kind of low key compared to most films you see these days. And the two main actors, Judi Dench and Billy Connolly, were both standouts. That was brilliant. I did get into the story, and I thought it worked very well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those movies that could be cloying, I think, very easily, but in my opinion, it has a good screenplay and really great performances that pull it out of those traps. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Okay, so let's start, I guess, with going through some questions. Do you think the movie does a good job showing Victoria's grief and why John Brown was called in?
Yeah, I think I think it kind of gets across in the first few minutes that the Victoria's grief is quite far-reaching. I mean, the staff around the household kind of use this term about being prisoners of the Queen's grief, because Victoria is in full control and they're unable to do anything. They have to follow this quite rigid regime, and gradually you get the idea. You get a problem that the whole country is having as a result of this, and I think and Judi Dench kind of shows her acting like quite early on when she's first talking to John Brown, and her voice kind of breaks a bit, and she starts talking about Albert, and then she kind of goes away in tears. So it definitely gets that across very well.
Yeah.
And you kind of understand why everyone's a bit desperate to break out of this, and so that's why John Brown is called in.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because a lot of times with with grief and things, you have a lot of sympathy, the first couple of months, even maybe that first year, but there becomes a point where it kind of stops. And it's not that and you do kind of need to continue on with your life, but you also still, that pain is oftentimes still there. It still hurts really bad.
Yeah.
So especially someone like her, I can imagine somebody like her, that it's hard for people to be real, with them. And what I've gathered about Queen Victoria is she wasn't that close to her children.
No, she wasn't.
And so that would make it harder too.
Yeah, and as I know, her and her eldest son, they didn't get on very well. That's it. That's the main one I know about.
Yeah. Well, she hated being pregnant, evidently, is what I read.
Yeah. She didn't like breastfeeding.
Yeah. And I don't know, she just wasn't a very maternal person, from what I've read.
No.
So she probably didn't get a ton of comfort from them. And
she actually kind of blamed her eldest son Albert Edward for Albert's death in a way, because he'd been behaving a bit badly. I think he'd been to this kind of military demonstration in Ireland, and he'd been spending some illicit time with this actress, and then he'd gone back to studying at Cambridge, and Prince Albert had gone to have a word with him about this, and they'd taken this stroll in wet weather, and it was soon after that Albert contracted the fever that killed him, and Victoria felt that was the prince's fault.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Huh. And does it seem surprising that they would call on this servant, bring him in like that? Or
it is an interesting move, but you gotta get the impression they're a bit desperate to do anything, so they bring in this guy with something of a connection to Albert. Mm-hmm. It might stir some positive feelings in Victoria.
Yeah, it does feel like they were grasping at straws a little bit.
Yeah.
They got more than they bargained for.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, so the next question I had was, what do you think of the two leads, Judi Dench and Billy Connolly? Do you think they had good chemistry together?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, Judi Dench is definitely very good. She gives a very convincing performance. Gets across this quite uncompromising character in Victoria, who's used to having her own way, and in the scenes where she has to kind of show more subtle emotion, really good. Like when she's talking about the grief she felt for Albert, and she's worried about it not about what it would mean if that lessens at all. Oh, Billy Connolly, I think, is sometimes a bit underrated as an actor, because he's mainly known as a comedian. Mm-hmm. But he does really well in this. He gets this character across. The things he does, like when he strips naked and goes swimming in the sea, that's kind of the thing you expect from Billy Connolly. Mm-hmm.
It's both of them are parts, like I said, that could be really cloying and kind of annoying, but because they're so good, it feels genuine, it feels authentic, it feels like a real person. Yeah,
Victoria would be quite easy just to be made very, very unlikable, I think, but you kind of understand her in this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really do. You really do. And just the way that he could be sort of the male version of a manic pixie dream girl in a way, but I feel like he feels like an authentic character, like somebody who's, you get enough sort of soft moments where he's not being all like crazy and whatever, and that I think he feels like a real person.
Yeah, it kind of suits Billy Connolly very, very well to be this quite forward person who calls the Queen woman and things like that. But he's also able to, like Judi Dench, able to capture the softer moments as well.
Yeah, I agree. I loved them both in this so much, and I thought they had great chemistry together. Yeah. So my next question is it believable that Brown could get away with such things like calling the Queen woman? It's interesting because you just think Victorian, like you just think that's so like formal, that it is kind of especially shocking, given that time period.
Yeah, you'd expect him to get he got quite firmly reprimanded for it. I don't know whether the real John Brown actually did that. It is he when you think about it, it's quite it's a little bit difficult to believe that someone like Victoria would stand for that. Who's this person who feels very strongly about the royal privilege and authority, and I don't know if that happened in real life, but I guess if she was just especially fond of him, then she would have let him get away with it.
Yeah, which is interesting. I read that they actually, it's interesting about these two movies that we're going to talk about because they both take really different approaches to true stories. Because in this case, there's a lot of speculation that they actually got married in real life, that they had this like secret wedding, and that it was a lot more intimate than you get here. And so it's sort of an interesting example of when they could have amped up the melodrama, and they could have made it, they could have gone with some of these theories and speculations, but instead they pull back.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting, I think.
Yeah, it does seem like the obvious thing to do when making a film. I mean, most historical films will take some kind of historical license, and so you might expect them to pursue this kind of myth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here they actually were reserved on that, which is very interesting. I
mean, there's not even that kind of a special like physical affection between them, just a bit of hand kissing.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like very strongly platonic rather than romantic. But personally, I didn't mind that.
No, I thought it was great.
Yeah,
that was really, really good. Yeah, it's a different. I don't know. It's made it really unique and something I could relate to because I'm not somebody who's had all this like secret weddings and melodrama and stuff, like just this friendship. I could relate to much more. So I was really glad that they took that approach.
Yeah, it is nice to see a movie that kind of focuses on this friendship, especially male-female friendship, which is another thing that doesn't get that much attention as opposed to male-female romance or romance between people of the same gender.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
But I did like this. I did like the kind of subtle approach they took with it. Something's kind of left to the imagination rather than being too overt with it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that feels like it feels like a play, and a little bit. I think it just feels sort of intimate in that regard, like a play does. But
because there aren't that many characters, are there? It's like a select group that it focuses on.
Yeah. So what did you think of the politicians and like the family and sort of the other servants, the various responses that people had to their friendship?
Yeah. The whole politics thing wasn't quite as interesting for me, even though it does play an important role in the story. Most of the bits I was interested in were the actual interactions between Victoria and John Brown.
Yeah.
But I do like some of the details that they pass around this cartoon of the empty throne in Parliament, and people are making jokes about Mrs. Brown, and you see this scene with the journalist sneaking around. It kind of it almost feels quite modern, and you often don't think about things like that happening in the Victorian era, but they did. There were like cartoons in newspapers and newspaper reporters looking for gossip. Yeah.
Interesting. And they talk about. I'm curious for your insight because. They talk about republicanism and that being something that worries the prime minister. Is this republicanism? And what does that mean in the world of British politics, republicanism?
Republicanism basically means abolishing the monarchy.
Oh.
And the reason the prime minister at the time, Benjamin Disraeli, he was his main worry about it. I kind of touch on it in the film. Is that he was a member of the Tory party, which are today called the Conservatives, and they were more closely linked to the monarchy than the other main party at the time, the Liberals. And the Liberals were at the time calling for political reform, with the possibility of it, with some people suggesting that the monarchy should be abolished, and then and that would then cause the Tories to lose power and Disraeli.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Obviously means something different here, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know you have two parties in the United States. Back then, I think it was mainly the Tories and the Liberals, but now there's Conservatives and a number of other parties.
now it's conservatives and Labour?
Labour and Liberal Democrats,
Hmm.
Green in the UK Independence Party.
All right. Do you feel for Victoria when she relents and decides to return to public life?
Yeah. The main thing I felt about it was just feeling sad about how it caused the relationship between Victoria and Brown to deteriorate, because he'd been persuaded that this was the greater good, and it just caused their relationship to break down a bit, and they become a bit more distant after that.
Yeah.
And it takes a while for them to reconcile. And I do feel a bit bad for Victoria, but I feel that politicians can have a point that it is necessary for her to return to public life.
Yeah.
That she kind of needs to fulfill her duties.
Is it possible for someone in the monarchy to say, okay, I'm gonna let my, like, I haven't died, but I'm gonna let my my son take over like the public duties? Is that something that's ever happened?
I'm not sure. Or I think I think sometimes some royals will have like assign certain public duties to members of the family. I can't think of any specific examples. I mean, the only monarch who's ever actually abdicated in favour of another member of the family would be Edward VIII, abdicating in favour of George VI.
But so you can't like retire from being queen, I guess.
Not really, no.
All right.
if the monarch was in really poor health, then they'd have to get other members of their family to stand in.
Interesting.
Yeah, like Elizabeth was doing for her father in The Crown.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I felt for her definitely. I felt, it's just, you feel bad that she can't like live sort of a more normal life, and that she has to sacrifice her happiness for the good of the people and the good of the country. And she says that, she says at one point, like, don't I have the right to feel happy?
Exactly. Yeah. She's saying that what she's doing right now makes her happy.
Yeah.
It's kind of a theme of both films, this and A Royal Night Out, about how the monarch's life is not their own, and and exploring a certain person's desire for a normal life.
Right. So what did you think about this assassination attempt? Was that one?
It was kind of unexpected, but from what I looked up, it was a man named Arthur O'Connor who'd had a gun that wasn't loaded, and he claimed he wanted the Queen to look at his documents about the release of some Irish political prisoners, because as well as all the people looking for reform in England, some of the Irish were looking for independence from Britain as well.
Because it was a little confusing in the movie what he was doing, why he was doing that. If he was just a crazy person, or if he had motives, or what? Yeah,
I mean, I think there are a total of 7 people who made attempts on Victoria's life in her lifetime, and I think quite a high proportion of them were considered to be mentally unstable, like Edward Oxford in the series Victoria.
Yeah,
he was the first one to try it.
That's interesting. I didn't know 7. She had 7.
Yeah, they're kind of varying degrees of seriousness. Some of them some are like five are getting near Victoria, and some of them weren't really using proper weapons. And some of them don't really. A few of them had some kind of statement to make, but most of them it was kind of difficult to figure out what their motives were, because they weren't quite all there.
Why do you think there were so many with her?
I don't know. Maybe because it was a bit of a trouble all time, with a lot of political things going on, and Victoria was quite this figurehead that drew a lot of attention. And also she lived for a very long time. She was the longest reigning British monarch until the current Queen Elizabeth just passed her quite recently.
Right.
And so I guess that's a long time for opportunities like that.
Yeah, I guess so. Interesting. We talked about it a little bit, but just overall, did you find it a moving story, or story you could relate to?
Not sure about relating to it. I mean, in regards to what you say about grief, I've been fortunate enough that I haven't had to grieve for that many people in my life.
Right.
So, and I think when I've been able to get on with my life in the meantime, so there have been times where I sometimes I can relate a little bit to Victoria's worry about about whether it's bad if she feels less grieving about Albert, because sometimes I would worry about it, whether I should be feeling more about a particular person I'd lost. Have you ever
Right.
felt like that?
Yeah. I've lost two cousins, well, three cousins, and my grandfather, who was very dear to me. And I still miss him. Like, I still cry whenever I think about him. I miss it. Would happen in 2001, and I loved him so much. But I certainly can understand that experience, and just like the way that you have this like human connection with people is what I relate to, I guess, about it. That you'll meet the right person at the right time who will pull you out of wherever you're at. And I remember when that happened with my grandpa, I was just really struggling, and at that time I met my friend Emily, who became one of my dearest friends, and we became college roommates. And she had actually just lost somebody in her life as well. She had lost her father. So it was obviously a lot even more traumatic. And we bonded, and we had this sharing kind of experience. So I related to this, I think, very strongly, because it reminded me kind of that moment and that experience. And just when you feel like, I've always really loved the story of Cinderella, because I love the idea of sort of that we each need sort of rescue from time to time. And in a certain way, I feel like that's kind of what what happens here a little bit. Like a human being is in pain, and another person comes and kind of rescues them and gets them out of. So that's what I kind of related to.
The no man is an island philosophy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. See, I wasn't sure about related to it, but I did still find it a moving story in regards to I was invested in their relationship, and it was sad to see it break down a bit and how they had less contact towards the end.
Yeah.
And I did pity John Brown a little bit towards the end, the way that he was just so devoted to the Queen, that he was kind of jumping at shadows a bit, and all the other servants were making fun of him. And eventually he goes running out after this intruder and catches pneumonia or something, and he ends up dying after that.
Do you think that they really did get married? I think that's true.
I don't know enough about to draw a full own conclusion, but from what I can see from like what Victorian historians think, they feel it was a bit unlikely that Victoria would have taken a step like that.
Fair enough. All right, so let's start talking about your choice, Royal Night Out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Okay. Well, basically it's set on VE Day in May 1945, when the war ends in Europe, the surrender of Germany, and it's about the two princesses, Elizabeth and Margaret, who are both teenagers at this point. This is like in between the events of the King's Speech, which was the start of the war, and the Crown, which takes place in the 1950s. And so Elizabeth and Margaret get this idea that they'd like to go out among all the celebrating crowds in London and get take some time to enjoy themselves. And and then the story is very loosely based on a true story. Like in real life, they did actually go out into London on that day, but it was a party of about 16 other young ladies, and and possibly a few men. I think I heard somewhere that Peter Townsend from the Crown was in there. Yeah, he was like the guy that Margaret wanted to marry.
Evidently they got back on time.
Yeah, they did.
That's what I read.
They got back at 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas in the film, it's Elizabeth and Margaret on their own, and they get separated.
Yeah.
And Margaret's like going to all these different places. And Elizabeth's trying to find her. She meets her with this airman called Jack, who's a bit anti-royalist, and they have this sort of very, very slight romance.
Right.
And so yeah.
So yeah, it's a totally different experience, as where like Mrs. Brown, they could have amped up things more, but they tone it down. And in this case, they took the other approach.
Yeah. Yeah, they do change a lot to make it like more suitable for a like what you expect from a film.
Sure.
Yeah, because they'd just be walking around with like 14 other people.
Right.
It'd be a bit more. It might not be quite as entertaining.
Exactly.
So did you enjoy it?
I did. Yeah, I thought it was really cute. I thought the girls were good, and it was just a cute, breezy little movie. Is what I felt.
Yeah, it's a very fluffy film, isn't it? It's yeah. I think there's this one film critic, Mark Kermode, who said it's absolute rubbish, but it's enjoyable rubbish.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it rubbish. I mean, it's not like high filmmaking.
Sure.
But when I watched it, I found it very entertaining. It was quite lovely.
I did too. I thought it was breezy. I like, romantic comedies very much. And it's not really romantic comedy, but it's in that ballpark, I would say.
Yeah. It certainly has comic moments. I mean, there's not a huge amount of romance in it. This only takes the comedy angle.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of Roman Holiday, is what I thought a lot of it. It's not quite on that level of Roman Holiday, but it has that feel, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I suppose it does. Yeah, I mean, I think I saw Roman Holiday once, but it was quite a while ago.
Okay.
So it is kind of the basic concept of the princess who runs away.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, runs away and then kind of meets the gruff guy. In Roman Holiday, it's Gregory Peck, the writer. In this, it's this kind of the gruff soldier, and it's very similar but enjoyable. I thought it was a fun romp, as you say.
Yeah. So the first question I would ask was that we just said about how the film is only very loosely based on a true story. Do you think that's acceptable, especially considering that there's other people depicted in still alive, like it has the actual queen in it?
The only time that it bothers me when people stretch a true story is when I feel like it's unfair in the negative. Like if it's something, this is just so positive. I can't imagine anybody like being offended by this or being, hurt by it in any way. But when I feel like, oh, they just smeared somebody and it's totally not true, then I have issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I did read a newspaper headline that suggested the Queen wasn't happy about the depiction of Margaret. I mean, I think Margaret died in 2002, but it said she wasn't happy about it being showing her being a bit irresponsible and drinking on this night out. But that might not have been true. I mean, it wasn't like an official source. But I think you're right. It is kind of it is pretty harmless overall. I mean, if you have like a historical movie that kind of does a disservice to real people, like some of the things I was watching for Titanic Month, and that makes it a bit different. But no, I think this was pretty harmless overall. I mean, if you were like being depicted in the film and you were watching it, you might disagree.
Like Pocahontas, for example, is we don't know if it's really true or not, but anyway, let's assume it is true and that it really happened. It portrays Radcliffe in a very negative light. He's the villain of the picture. Yeah. And in reality, he was a starving man, who a very, complex character. And so something like that makes me a lot more annoyed than something like this.
Yeah. And the fact they had to age up Pocahontas so she can have this romance with John Smith when she was like actually 12 when they met, if they actually did meet, because that's not really certain, is it?
Exactly. Yeah, she was a little girl if it happened at all, because he didn't really start telling the story until she became kind of a popular figure in England, I guess, when she went over there, and all of a sudden then he started telling all these stories or something to that effect. So a lot of people are like, I don't know. Yeah. So
but I think they seem to age up Margaret a little bit in this. I mean, she in 1945 she was on VE Day she was 14.
Oh,
I think
interesting.
she was like a few months off 15. But she seems slightly older than that, especially like to go out partying and drinking like that.
I didn't realize that.
Whereas Elizabeth was 19.
Oh yeah, then I can understand a little bit more why that might have annoyed the Queen, because to have, especially if you knew that she was so young to be portrayed that way, that maybe that's a little.
I think the actress was in her early 20s.
Yeah.
As well.
But I think the part, I don't think she was playing someone who was 14 in the movie.
Yeah. Had you known, by the way, that Elizabeth was in the Women's Auxiliary in the last few months of the war?
I didn't know that. I had no idea.
But no, I didn't know if they'd mentioned it in The Crown at all. I couldn't remember.
Oh, good point. I don't think they did.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That was interesting.
But apparently, when she actually did go out of that, she'd worn her officer's uniform with the cap kind of pulled down, so she'd be less likely to be recognised. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm surprised that the Queen commented on this. Was it a pretty big hit in England?
I don't think it was that big, really. No, it was quite a small film.
Because I didn't think that the Queen, that they ever really commented on any of these things.
No, it wasn't really a comment. No, it was just this one article I read that said some source close to the Queen had claimed that she felt this way, but it might not have been true. It wasn't an official source from the palace or anything like that.
Oh, because they never commented on like the Queen or the Crown or any of these sort of things. I'd be so curious to know what they think of the Crown.
Yeah, I thought they liked the Queen though. I'd heard that Helen Mirren had been invited to meet her or something, but she couldn't because of work commitments.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. So, and Helen Mirren has actually played Queen Elizabeth twice. Two different.
What was the second time then?
It's for I think it was a HBO movie. Now, shoot, I shouldn't have said that because now I don't know. But I know she did play her twice. Anyway, so go ahead.
Okay, the next question will be: what did you think of the characterization of and the relationship between Elizabeth and Margaret?
I thought it felt like sisters to me. I felt like they did a good job with casting. It felt like these two people, these two women, really could be, they really could be sisters.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to see the more positive relationship between them as opposed to the Crown, where there's a bit more tension. Yeah. You kind of feel like the characterization is made. They have quite like set the simple overall characterization, where Elizabeth is like the sensible, responsible one, and Margaret is a bit more carefree and fun loving, because she's like the second born and she doesn't have very proper responsibilities. I mean, I think she says at one point, "Nobody gives a monkeys what I do."
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. In The Crown, you definitely get a feel that they do care and are so, like, one of the things they just emphasize so much in that series is how like horrible the abdication was for the royal family, and how like they're just in constant panic. Even someone like her, that she's going to do that. Like, everybody is just, which really surprised me, how much of a big deal that was. Because from my perspective, I always felt like, well, they got a great king out of it, so why did they care? Who? It doesn't matter. Like, if he didn't want to do it, like, wouldn't you rather have somebody who wants to do it than somebody who doesn't want to do it? Yeah. And so that was the way I looked at it. But obviously that wasn't the case for the royal family. It was just this huge thing.
Yeah, I think maybe it's probably because like the royal family is supposed to be beyond reproach, and so the idea of this king giving up the throne just to marry this American divorcee, it probably just be the way to make the family look bad. I've heard kind of some historians making the suggestion that Edward never really wanted to be king at all, and he kind of used use Wallis Simpson as a convenience excuse.
I found it out. It was 2005. Helen Mirren played Queen Elizabeth in it was a miniseries actually on HBO called Elizabeth the First.
All right.
There you go. Yeah, and let's see, the Queen was 2006, so they were right near each other.
Right, so that was first then when she played before the main one. Right.
Yeah. Interesting. So, but yeah, I think they did a really good job with casting. I think these felt like sisters. I think they had, sort of a chemistry together. They both looked like each other, I think, quite a bit.
Yeah. They certainly looked the part. I mean, even their parents as well. Rupert Everett definitely looked like how George VI did.
Yeah.
Like he's like in pictures he looks like quite a slender man, whereas I think both Colin Firth in The King's Speech and Gerard Harris in the Crown are slightly more heavyset.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And he didn't go overboard with the stuttering. No, I thought that he did that.
It is there. Possibly a recognition of The King's Speech where everybody knows about the stuttering.
Right.
But no, they didn't place too much focus on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the next question will be, what did you think about Elizabeth's relationship with Jack?
Well, see, I'm really inclined. I'm very high on Jack Rayner right now because I loved Sing Street so much, and he plays the brother, and I loved him in that movie.
Oh, is that the actor, Jack Rayner?
Yeah.
Oh, right,
have you seen it?
I haven't yet. No.
Oh, it's so good. I loved it so much.
I was a bit unsure of the concept about they starting a band to impress a girl. Is that what it is?
Yeah. It's not like the most original movie ever made, but it's just so freaking charming. I loved it. And he's in it. And I thought I would have given him Best Supporting Actor. I loved his performance in that movie. Okay. I'm just feeling like he's won me over because he's in Transformers 4, and I obviously hated that movie. And and so he's winning me back, Jack Rayner. But I liked him in this. I thought he was very charming. Yeah. And I don't know. I enjoyed it.
I kind of felt slightly bad for him having to be constantly pestered by this woman he doesn't know, who's just constantly he tries to just walk away a few times. He just keeps popping up again and trying to get her to help her find her sister.
Yeah, well, and you have to pay all this money.
Exactly, yeah.
Stuff with her.
There's also there's also the fact that there's a few references to Philip, aren't there? I mean, I don't think she ever actually mentions it by name. She just says like she's sort of taken and that he's abroad. It's presumably referring to Philip.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I missed those references because I was thinking, is she not like with Philip at this point, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, but I mean, she had already met him in like the 1930s, and I think it was in 1939 or around that she first said that she was in love with him, and they ended up getting married. I think 2 years after the war ended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I don't know. I'm not sure how much. Presumably, they would still have been in contact during the war while he was still on the continent.
Yeah. Well, and we should be clear, like this character is completely fictitious.
Oh, he is, yes, absolutely, yeah.
Fictitious. Yeah. So she wasn't cavorting with a soldier.
No, she does make it clear to him they just have this one very, very light kiss at the end. But it's not actually on screen, is it? The camera kind of cuts away.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kidding. So, but I thought that he was charming and just what the role needed, you know?
Yeah.
So
so parts of his character kind of linked to my next question, which was that in this film we see different characters with different views of the royal family, and were you able to appreciate their viewpoints?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say like the character development is super great in this, but but it works, I think. You know, you kind of get the idea of why he is, why he's left, why he's upset.
Yeah.
And without it dragging the movie down, becoming depressing.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking in the sense that he seems to be kind of an exception, within the film, because of all the people that we see in the crowd hours, most of them are very much in favour of the monarchy and feeling very pleased of the role they played during the war. I mean, just like when he's making comments during the speech in the pub, everyone's reacting very negatively to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting scene.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a certain thing that, like, I don't know, that you just give people their moment, you know, like, yes, like there's certain issues that are sort of more complex and we can kind of get into like too much of a rah-rah kind of experience, but like I feel like that can be handled on day 2. We can get into sort of more complex discussions, but we should allow people to have one day of kind of that experience.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like, why do you have to be such a killjoy?
Yeah. That's kind of everybody else seemed to think.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think of him? Did you like him?
I did like him. Yeah, I did understand him, how he was the one actually out there doing the fighting. He comes back, Akin feels he's a bit hard done by. But he's always about the things his commanding officer did after his friend died. You can understand why he feels that way compared to like these upper classes who he feels don't really understand. And then he and Elizabeth do end up coming to this to a sort of understanding once he actually gets to know her and how she thinks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that, it's like, the poor misunderstood royal, but you know, like, we're all humans and we all, you know, I really like, this seems like a weird analogy, but there's this movie called The Company Men that was a couple of years ago, and I really thought it was a beautiful, devastating, moving story about these executives or whatever, these stockbrokers or whatever they were, I can't remember, but businessmen who lost their jobs, and how it was just like devastating for them. It was like their whole life, and how all these different characters responded to it. And what was interesting to me is that a bunch of reviews that I saw from the movie, it were like, why should we feel sorry for them? They're driving Ferraris. They're, you know, like, they're upper class people. Like, why should we feel sorry for them? And I'm like, why shouldn't you feel sorry for them? Like, they're still humans. Like, they've.
It's all relative, isn't it? And it depends who's watching.
Yeah, I mean, and anyway, I recommend that movie because it's got Tommy Lee Jones in it. It's got Chris Cooper in it. It's got Ben Affleck. It's a really good cast, and it's I don't know. I thought it was great, and just how it would be for somebody to have that kind of, I guess, fall from grace, for lack of a better word. That would be devastating. And so I don't know. It's just interesting. Sometimes the people, it's like, can we only feel empathy for poor people, I guess?
No. I can't. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the film, but there was this film recently that wasn't like well received, and it was suggested, and I think somebody connected to it suggested that it was because it featured some rich white person, and people didn't want to watch that because it made them think of Donald Trump or something.
Yeah,
I can't remember what film it was.
Yeah, I know. I find that a really lame critique, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I did feel for her, and I definitely did in The Crown for sure. There's just the amount of responsibility and especially with the royal family, because at least with somebody's job and stuff, it was like, that's their choice, you know, of like where they're going to work and what they're going to do. Whereas like for the Crown, they have no choice, like in this, like I mean, I guess you could say that Edward did, but aside from that extreme measure, they don't have any choice.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like they have to live this life, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that kind of ties into another question I was going to ask. Do you think the movie could have looked more into Elizabeth's desire for a normal life?
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a breezy movie, though. I mean, I feel like you could have had maybe a couple more moments, but I think that's there. I think there's moments.
Yeah, it's handled quite quite low key, really. I mean, towards the beginning, when we talk about getting to know their subjects, and mostly it's quite kind of indirect with how Elizabeth and Margaret enjoy themselves, and it's towards in the third act when Jack's realised that they're princesses, and then Elizabeth is telling about how she's only made a cup of tea by herself, and when she went to be a subaltern, then she had to go home every night while the others stayed and ate their rations, and then they had this little discussion in a taxi about it. And it kind of reminded me of The Crown a bit, because that's what Elizabeth and Philip were going to do. They were going to go spend some time by themselves in Malta or something, but then the king died, and she had to go and accept the responsibilities of being queen.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, and there was a lot of Margaret that reminded me of The Crown too in this, like just that scene where in The Crown where she gives the speech and she's just trying to like be herself, she's just trying to be authentic and what she thinks people will like and what she thinks is good, and it totally backfires on her, and you just like I got that sense of this person here as well.
Yeah, because as on paper, Margaret would have a little bit more freedom, and so to express herself, and then, but like in the Crown, there are still rules on that. Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting, and I mean, part of that is just like I don't know. There's certain boundaries, I think, for almost anybody, within like the sort of the social and familial and other things sphere that they're kind of born into and that they live in. But, obviously this is heightened to the extreme with the royal family. If you do certain things, then it will be hard, like there's certain things that are just like stepping way outside of like for one person let's just as an example, if I got a nose ring, like there's some families where it'd be like, who cares? No big deal. If I did that, my family would be a huge deal. So not that I ever would, but you know what I mean? There's just like every family is kind of different in that way. I think.
So the last question I was going to ask, do you feel it created a good atmosphere of London on VE Day?
Yeah, I think so. You definitely got a sense of the crowds and the busyness of it.
Just the sheer scale of the crowds, because it's not really a very big movie. They put a lot of effort into it's just the chaos in the streets and everybody's joy with the flags and everything. I did like this one detail of in the pub. There's like a dartboard with Hitler's face on it.
Oh yeah. Well, it really did feel like at least what I think a stereotype of like an English pub kind of thing. Like it felt very. It was good. I enjoyed that part of it. Definitely had a sense of time and place.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But sometimes I just like watching pleasant, movies like this, and I think with both of these movies, there's an argument to be made for movies about kind of bad people, about anti-heroes, about whatever that are complex or whatever. But I also think there's something great about just watching movies about good people.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And both of these movies are just about good people.
Yeah, exactly.
Who happen to be in the monarchy.
Maybe Victoria's slightly more questionable than Mrs. Brown. She's a bit of a hard person she'll be a hard person to like if you actually knew her. That's a very positive film.
Fair enough, but I don't know. Just so many. I feel like particularly with modern novels, not quite as much. I don't think with movies, but you still see it where I feel like they have this tendency, modern novels, to just tag on this negative attribute because they're so afraid of having like perfect characters. And so you'll have like this housewife who of course has to be an alcoholic because like, you know what I mean? And I hate that so much. And so it's always so refreshing to me when I just feel like this is a good person. Like this is a normal, moral person, and anyway, so I enjoy that.
Where the flaws aren't quite so out there, it just kind of come through in certain situations.
Sure, yeah. Their flaws are more nuanced and I think subtle and human.
Yeah. If you go like the girl on the train with the housewife who's an alcoholic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a perfect example. I haven't seen the movie, but the book, yes.
Yeah. Perfect. I thought the book was okay, but I just didn't like the characters in it. I didn't feel any of them were really likable because their flaws were too kind of outweighed anything else about them.
Exactly. That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So, so that's great. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed both these movies. I think that they are definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right. Well, we will decide on a new topic, and so we'll let everybody know once we do and what the choices are. And I really enjoyed this one. This was a nice kind of breath of fresh air. And so, where can people find you?
My Twitter is PNE Richard. And I also have a blog at velociraptor256.wordpress.com. I've also recently started making some YouTube videos. We're currently under the username velociraptor256, but that's still a work in progress at the moment.
Cool. Yeah. And you should check out his blog. He's been doing all of these Titanic reviews, and they're really, really good.
The month of April, yeah.
Yeah. And so this weekend is going to be very exciting on the channel. I actually have another podcast today that is going to go up where we are doing the Animation Showdown, and I'm really excited for that. We've been doing it on my Twitter, but this is going to be it's going to be a bracket with just a bunch of just several of my friends are going to join me. We're going to go through it, and we're going to get our own choices. And then tomorrow, I am going to be doing a special podcast with my friend Conrado, and he and I are going to be doing our summer movie box office predictions. So that should be fun. And we're also going to be talking about some indie picks that we for the summer that we recommend or that we're excited for. And then tomorrow, it's just crazy. It all just happened today, but or this weekend, and I'm starting a series of Anne of Green Gables podcasts. My friend Amber is going to be joining me, and we're talking about the 1985 Megan Follows, Kevin Sullivan production that everybody loves. And so we're going to be talking about that leading up to the new Netflix series that is going to premiere on the 12th of May, where it's called Anne, the new series. So that's going to be really fun. I'm excited about that. And I'm going to put off Family Movie Night until Wednesday because of all of this, because I don't want it to get lost in all this other stuff. So that should be fun.
Okay.
So anyway, well, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to next month.
Yes.